Hi y'all, and welcome back to the garden. So I didn't shoot an earlier video this week, just things got away from me. It's that time of year where I'll probably start making less content anyway because there's just naturally less going on in the garden. Last year I took a break in November through December for about a month. I don't know that I'll be doing that this year. I've still got some videos I want to create throughout the year, but this is the type of season that I typically take a good break. I think all of you, if you're not taking breaks from the garden just to kind of sit back and get inspiration for next year, then you should. Don't make it something that becomes a chore. I have to focus really hard on doing that. There are, of course, garden chores that we just have to do. But making it something that you enjoy is the most important part of it, because once it becomes a job, it's not fun anymore. Ain't that right? So I have come out here and I have cleaned tons of weeds. I have cleaned up all the garden beds I think that I care to clean up. I trimmed some boxwoods manually with some hedge shears. The only thing I think I have left to do is I want to trim some hydrangeas preemptively, because there's going to be a lot going on in the spring. And I'm going to do a whole video on all the things that I have planned once I get some more definitive plans going in. There's probably three-ish major projects that I want to tackle. One of them being the replacements of the spruces. And so I have made a decision on the trees. I am going to do the Bracken's brown magnolia. I kind of mentioned that in the last video. And for the other side, when I was making this decision about to remove them, and did that video a couple videos ago, I had a viewer comment that a red obelisk beech might be a really good option for the other side. And I looked into it, and it looks like a really beautiful tree. And so I'm trying to find that locally. I'm getting the local garden center to try and hunt that over winter. And then if they can get that in, we'll install those really early, maybe in March or April, before we have substantial warm up in temperatures while they're still dormant. So the red obelisk beech is probably what I'm going to be putting there. It's not evergreen. I wanted something that was beautiful there. It will still be very interesting because it's kind of similar to the kindred spirit oaks that I installed. It's very fastigiate. It only gets maybe in its full age 8 to 10 foot wide. It's just very upright. It has purple leaves. It's called red obelisk, but the leaves are much more purple. And they're really crinkly, but it does grow kind of slow. So that's one of the things I'm trying to get the garden center to find a bigger version of that to start out. I don't want to plant something small and having, to wait years and years for it to grow on to be of any substance on that corner. Because for one thing, those spruces provided a lot of weight to the edge of the house. Now, I am not missing them like I thought I would. It looks empty, and I hate leaving it this way over winter, completely blank, but I'm glad that I had them removed because they were going to be causing damage to the house maybe in the next year if that wasn't, if not sooner. And then we just had that 𝗩𝗟𝗃𝗧𝗦 disease going on. So got all of that wrapped up this fall, which is great. And I'm going to be dreaming and thinking about how I'm going to redesign those spaces. Since the red obelisk isn't an evergreen, there will be replacement evergreens put there. I need to think of some stuff that will take part sun because it's still got some shade from the Bradford pear, which I told you would probably be coming out in the next few years. But whatever I put there needs to be able to take the sun after that's removed, because it'll become a focal point. I haven't thought about what I'll replace the Bradford pear with, because that's a couple years down the line, particularly depending on how big of a beech tree I can get. If I can get a big one in here, we might consider removal of that a little sooner, just because I want something of substance when I remove another tree that big. And then replacement for Bradford pear would probably be something more flowering, potentially, that stays smaller, not quite as big and massive in the very front of the yard blocking the house. The weather, since I told you I sometimes feel like a weatherman on here, has been really odd. This is the only year since we've lived in this house, and I think since I've lived in Ohio, that we haven't had consistently cool weather. It is fall weather right now. I'm out in short sleeves and shorts right now. It has been 70 the past few days as the high, at least upper 60s. Typically we would be pretty cool by now. So we had that cold spell at the beginning of October, and I just knew that was a sign of bad winter to come. But then we warmed up and we had a little bit of rain, a good amount of rain actually a few days ago, which is one of the reasons that I wasn't able to get out. Stuff was just pretty mushy, and that made me feel much better about the garden going to sleep because we desperately needed it. And so I am going to take advantage of this continuously pretty good weather and continue to kind of clean up the garden. Now, one thing I'm not doing, and what I don't recommend you do, is to blow out your beds. You did see me cut down a lot of perennials this fall because I don't want to have to deal with those in the spring with the other projects I'm going on. I've mentioned I have to kind of take my time because I have to throw all of my stuff away that's diseased or otherwise can't be composted really well. I don't have a really great way to compost in a subdivision. I have to throw it in the trash, and so I have to take advantage of the trash availability that I have, and doing a lot of those tasks this fall. Now that the garden has gotten so big, will free up both time and space for trash in the spring. So we're going to try that this fall. I cut back lots of stuff that I normally would just leave. I'm trying to make my life a little easier and allow myself to enjoy the garden more than it becoming a chore of things that I just have to do. So that was kind of the focus this fall. The one thing I didn't do, and what I was going to mention, is leave your leaves as they drop where they are. They provide lots of great insulation for the plants and the shrubs that are there. You can see behind me here, there's lots of leaves from this willow that's lost all its leaves on the ground here. And I just leave those. They become a living mulch and break down. I actually haven't mulched this area since I installed this bed 2 years ago, I think. I may have come in and added a bag here and there if we were having weed problems. But the leaves do a really good job of acting as a mulch. And this is the area of the garden where I've added some ground covers that I want to kind of fill in, because I told you I have a thistle issue back here. And so as many ground covers that can come in, make this a little foresty area. I'm going to be looking into some short grasses that I can put in this area, probably some 𝗪𝗔𝗓𝗧𝗦, 𝗪𝗔𝗓𝗪𝗔𝗓𝗔, I think it's called, or 𝗪𝗪𝗔𝗓𝗔𝗡𝗧, maybe next spring, that I can add into these places that will be okay under the willow. There's lots of different varieties, thousands of varieties of 𝗪𝗓𝗪𝗧𝗏. Sometimes you think of 𝗪𝗓𝗪𝗧 needing moist conditions. There are 𝗪𝗓𝗪𝗧𝗏 out there that like also dry conditions, and everywhere in between, sun and shade. So 𝗪𝗓𝗪𝗧𝗏s are a great plant for you to add to your garden, both for texture and color, and as well as just acting, in some cases, some of them spread rhizomatically, if that's a word, rhizomatically. I don't know if that's correct, but we're just going to say they spread by rhizomes is what I'm trying to get out. And others that are just kind of bunching, and you have to manually kind of spread them around if you want them that way. So I'm going to be doing a lot of research on other ground covers this fall and winter. Midwest ground covers. I watched a YouTube video on 𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗧𝗏 the other day on them. It was really great. I'd recommend you check it out if you're interested in adding 𝗪𝗪𝗪𝗧𝗏. And I want to show you a bloom in the garden, which I believe it did this last year. I think it's a little more prominent this year because our weather has been so mild this fall after we had that initial kind of downturn. I am having a reblooming iris bloom. I didn't get a lot of iris blooms this year because I added a lot of iris to my garden last year, and they just did not bloom this first year. But this iris over here is one that I got from, I think it was actually like a package from Costco or something, or Walmart. And I planted it a couple years ago, and it's actually become pretty vigorous. And it's right here, and you can see all of these leaves that are on the ground here, but it's really beautiful. And I don't know that I got blooms last year because typically we'd have freezing weather right now that would really ruin it. But it's been open a day or so, so the blooms are kind of fading a little bit, but it's back there, and you can see this one's even putting on another bloom stalk. So irises do rebloom. There are some varieties that you can pick out that will bloom multiple times a year, at least twice. This is a variety, I don't know the specific one, but if you're looking for a reputable iris seller, you can usually narrow down options on their website that offer reblooming irises. I also have some winterberry hollies that are looking really good. These blooms on this winterberry were actually very dried out. Just a couple weeks ago before we got the rain, they were shriveled up, and I'm glad we got rain because they plumped right up. You can actually see there's one right here that's kind of dried up, but they plumped right up and look really beautiful now. I planted this, I guess last year when we redid this entire bed space before the fence was installed, so it's really small, but these are things that are great for cutting and adding, of course, to Christmas arrangements. It's too small this year, so I'm not going to be doing any cutting on it, but it's really beautiful in the garden in fall until we get lots of freezes and then the birds kind of pick these berries off to eat over winter. What I didn't get to yet are my dahlias, and part of the reason for that is I have been waiting for a good freeze and consistent freezes so that the foliage will die off and I can clean them up. Right now they're of course looking rough, but I still have blooms. It's kind of crazy to have November dahlia blooms. You can see a lot of the foliage is just brown and gross though. But probably this weekend I will preemptively come in and cut them back. The reason I wasn't cutting them back is because I didn't want them to try and push new growth until we had consistently cool weather. So if we don't continue or the temperatures don't start dropping and we don't get consistent freezes, these are maybe another week or so before I get to these. I've got all the materials I need to hopefully preserve these in these beds over winter. We'll see how that works out. Once again, just the disclaimer that this is something I'm experimenting with this week. I'm okay if I lose my dahlias. Last year was not a great dahlia year. This year was great, but I don't like storing them. So dahlias are not hardy to zone 6. I'm going to be trying to winter over them in my raised garden beds using a couple methods of insulation. And if they come back, that'll be how I do them from here forward. If they don't come back, so be it. I'll plant zinnias in their place, but I just want you, if you're around here, to know it's not something I recommend because I've never tried it, but this will be a great experience for local followers or people who live in zone 6, depending on how your winters are, to try a method and see if we can get them to survive here, even in raised beds. Now, I have heard of dahlias overwintering in the ground in zone 6 if you mulch them sufficiently. The problem I have at my house is the soil in winter just gets really wet, and then I have that clay soil, and all the dahlias I've ever planted in the ground have rotted. So I have to grow them in raised beds around here, at least until some of these beds get amended many years down the line with lots and lots of mulch and compost. But until that time, we're going to try and overwinter them in the raised bed and see how that does. All the fall colors in the garden are looking really good. I'm glad I added some things to the garden this fall or this year that bring that touch of fall. And we've had a really good fall. It's been longer than usual because the weather's been so nice. And so everything's been able to shine really nicely in the garden, including this blue shadows 𝗧𝗦, which has lost a lot of its leaves now. But I want to show you how multicolored this shrub is. So if you wanted to add it to your garden, you could. So check out all of these colors. We've got reds, we've still got some of the blue foliage, greens, purples, oranges. It's really incredible. And this is its first year in the garden, of course, and so it's not probably looking as great as it normally would, but I really like the impact that it's making here right at the front of this border. Then we have the proudberry coralberry, which is trying to hold on. The thing, I love the proudberry coralberry. It is gorgeous for the months of like October and the end of September, but the berries do get really gross pretty quickly. So they don't hold their berries as long as like a winter berry might. They turn black for me, and it may depend on the weather that year, depending on how much rain we had, but they're still really beautiful to see from afar in the garden. We've still got some roses trying their hardest to bloom. This is Eustacia 𝗧𝗦 by David Austin. Still some little pollinators out there too. So I just wanted to give y'all a little update on the garden, a few things left outstanding that I've got to do this fall, and let you know that content may or may not be slowing down over the next few weeks. Like I said, there's still a few videos that I want to make, that I have specifically a list of items I want to cover before we head too deep into winter. But thank you guys for joining me and following along. And remember, in a world full of hate, be a light. Take care, everyone. Bye.